He transferred to the bed and she lifted his legs up onto it. He knew she would do this from now on just so she could touch them. It was fine with him. The braces were on the floor by the bed and he had her push the chair out of the way and then get one off the floor. As she sat it on the bed, he looked at her and then said, "Let's get these shorts out of the way. Can you pull them off of me as I lift myself up?" Salina could only nod her head yes right now. He took hold of the trapeze bar overhead and pulled himself up and she pulled them down his rear. He got back down on the bed and she lifted his legs and pulled them off. His hard cock was right there for her to look at and she did. He was on the long side but not overly big around. Salina did not know what to do next and Kip snapped his fingers to bring her back. She laughed and said sensory overload. Kip pushed himself up with his arms and took his t-shirt off then back down on the bed. "Have you seen braces before?" and she said yes and had studied them online a lot. He said great, have at it and put his hands behind his head. She lifted the leg and slid the brace under it, getting the foot into the plastic footpiece. She started at the first band just below the knee, then the knee pad, then the band above the knee and then the band at the top of the brace that ended almost touching his groin. This meant she had to get her hand near his dripping cock and she did not hesitate and fastened the Velcro strap there. She got the other brace from the floor and repeated the process. He told her very good job. Salina said thanks and can I join you, and Kip said please. First she took her shorts off and then got into bed with him. Kip noticed she had a very large patch of black pubic hair. He was that way also. He told her to go ahead and look everything over and to take her time, he was not going any place, he deadpanned. She gave him a big kiss and moved down to his legs. She touched, pushed, pulled, lifted and thoroughly looked over everything about his legs and braces. She moved up by his hard-on and looked at him with a questioning look. She then said, "You said everything." Kip laughed and said, "Go ahead." She took hold of him and gave it the same exam as she had done with his legs. He was leaking a lot of pre-cum and one time she licked her finger off saying yum. Kip finally said, "Enough, do I get the same privilege?" and she said, "Sure, how do you want me to do it?" He said, "Just come up here and nurse me." Salina laughed and moved up and put her nipple in his mouth. He sucked it hard and took hold of it and squeezed it some to make the nipple poke out more. He asked her to switch breasts so he could give the same attention to the other one. He did not want to play favorites. Salina was in heaven with what he was doing. No one had ever been so good to her sexually. After almost 20 minutes he said, "Let me see the rest," and she said, "How?" "Sit on my face," he said, and she looked at him like he was crazy. Kip told her he was serious and he would help her, so she knew what he meant. He directed her to straddle his face between her thighs, and then put her pussy right on his mouth. He helped her get into position and encouraged her to lower herself to his mouth. She did, and he immediately started licking and sucking on her. She also was very wet and he enjoyed how she tasted. She finally relaxed and started enjoying what he was doing to her. She did not really realize he spent all of his time around her lips and vagina. All of a sudden he moved his mouth and took her whole clit, hood and everything in his mouth. He sucked on it and flicked her clit with his tongue. She immediately had a tremendous orgasm, falling forward on the headboard to support herself and bucking her hips on his mouth. He finally stopped his ministrations and she came back to earth. She got off him and lay beside him, saying that was the biggest and best orgasm she had ever had. No one had ever done that to or for her. She grabbed him and started kissing him and could taste her juices all over his face. She finally let go and asked what she needed to do for him. Kip asked what did she want to do and she said, "Sit on your prick and fuck you." He said, "Sounds good to me, and do you want me to use a rubber?" She said no, just like he was. She moved down and straddled his pelvis and took hold of him and guided it into her sheath. They were both so wet he slid right in. When they felt him hit bottom they looked and he was only 3/4 or so of the way in. She pushed down on him more, then started moving up and down on him. She looked him in the eye and said she was very nervous and aroused. Could she please just do it and they could work on the fine details later. Kip said sure, go for it, whatever happens will be great for both of us. Salina rocked back and forth on him and thought she had never felt anything so good in her life. She noticed if she tilted her pussy forward some, her clit hit something hard and felt even better. She continued that way and soon came again. Her muscles spasms in her vagina clenched Kip and he came right after she started, so they both came together. They both seemed to keep each other going for almost a minute, then Salina fell forward on Kip's chest. They soon came to and hugged and kissed each other. Salina finally told Kip that was her fantasy to screw someone with their braces on. He told her she could repeat it any time and next time even facing his legs holding onto his braces if she wanted. She said, "Are you sure you don't mind me using your being crippled for my pleasure?" And he reached for one of her breasts and said, "No, I use you for the same thing, remember? It's your super sexy body that gets me off." She said, "I see your point, thanks though." He kept hold of her breast, rubbing the nipple. Salina then asked if he could stand by the bed for her. He said sure, and she pulled his braced legs over to the side of the bed. He moved the trapeze over and pulled himself to a standing position and dropped the drop locks to make the braces rigid at the knee. Standing there he got hard again and Salina put her hand around him while she looked at him standing there. After some time went by, he asked her if she wanted to get in the shower with him and she said sure. She again helped him as he unlocked the knees and sat down. She undid the braces and moved his legs over to the edge, then as he transferred to his wheelchair she helped lift them onto the footrest. They got into the bathroom and Kip showed how he used the John. He pulled his chair to the seat and scooted forward facing backwards on it. Salina did her thing as he got in the shower and pushed his chair out. She joined him and he closed the glass door and turned the water on. There was both a shower head on the wall and a hand wand. They got wet, then soaped each other and rinsed off. Kip asked her if she wanted him to get some douche bottles and other female products for her. She laughed and said sure if you are brave enough. He said pads or tampons. She said both and gave him brand names of the things she used. Kip's phone rang from his secretary, bringing him out of his remembrance. He answered and she reminded him of a meeting he had in 5 minutes. He thanked her, got the stuff ready, went by the restroom and to his meeting, just getting there on time. Since he was in charge of the meeting with several of his managers, he did not want to set a bad example. The meeting lasted until the end of the workday and he checked his messages and saw nothing that needed to be taken care of today and left for home. He called Salina that he was on his way and picked her up on the street and they headed home. He thought how sexy she looked as she walked in front of the van with her 2 prosthetic arms with hooks showing from her sleeveless blouse. With her now very strong legs she stepped up into the van without being able to use her arms for help and got seated. Kip got her seatbelt and pulled it across her chest and fastened it. He gave her a big kiss while he was over the reaching up to cup her full, braless breast as he did. She asked what brought that on and he told her something had reminded him of school and how they met earlier at lunch. She said that was a wild, fantastic time. "Do you think we have as much sex as back then or more?" she asked. "More," Kip said. "You are much sexier since you lost your arms." Salina said she thought they had more also and thanked him for both. He grinned at her and said, "Well, it's you that keeps me hard all the time." She said, "Good, as you must have been sending me mental signals today. I was thinking about screwing you when we got home anyway. Looks like now I won't have to work so hard to make it happen." Kip said no, he would not resist her, and besides he was planning on doing her after they went to bed also. Salina said it sounds like a good trade-off then. They both laughed at their antics. They got home and pulled into the garage. He unlatched her seatbelt and she was able to pull the door handle herself. He got on the lift and down out of the van and they went into the house. Salina's clothing had been modified with Velcro closings and she was pretty well able to dress and undress as long as she had at least her left hook arm on. She removed her low heels and sat on the bed. She reached up with her foot and using her toes undid the top of her blouse and pulled it open. She removed it and then stood and used a left hook to undo her skirt and took it off. She stood naked before Kip, then helped him out of his clothing and undid the straps of his braces with their hooks. He grabbed the trapeze bar over his side of the bed and pulled himself out of his braces and onto the bed. He did not have to go to the bathroom, but Salina did. Then she came back and got in bed with him. She kept her arms on and looked very sexy. She put her breasts in Kip's face and he sucked her nipples hard and licked her areolas. That was one of the best things he did for, to her she